Welcome everybody to your final episode of Fantasy News, brought to you in the void. That is right, Kayla and I this week will actually, fortunately, be moving in to our new home, and I can't wait to get you all live streams and bookshelf setup videos. It's gonna be a blast. But today, let's go ahead and smack that out of the way and start talking about the fantasy news. Now, later on in this video, I want to make it clear, double caveat before the caveat I'm already gonna put in that section, that I'm going to get into my own personal Sanderson Conspiracy theory today. It is purely, entirely me trying to call something. Whether or not is the case, I have absolutely no idea. This is truly me going full just whiteboard conspiracy mode. You'll see when we get there. But for now, let's go ahead and kick it on off with the book cover reveals of the week, starting with R.S. Ford's Engines of War. Coming out June of 2025, this is the final novel in the Age of the Uprising trilogy, where guilds clash, magic fuels machines, and all-out war has consumed an empire. Designed by Planet Pinto. Cover illustration by Mike Heath. Kind of more simple, more held back. Certainly not gonna be in like my top 20 of the year, but I like how much it seems to be conveying successfully the tone of that pitch where it's like magic fueled by machines. Hells yes. My question though comes in, is this fire actually going to be how the cover looks? Or is this just part of the graphic that's in the, I can actually check, I'm gonna check real quick. Oh damn, okay, the fire is actually going to be on the cover. I really wonder how that's gonna look in person. I think I've seen similar things before to varying effect. I almost would like it more if they somehow like chopped that corner so it actually looked like the fire was moving up and you actually could like see the page underneath. That's a slippery slope to go down though. Let's go ahead and instead of sliding down that slope, get into the next news. And that is going to be a cover reveal for The Sea Eternal by Emery Robin, with design by Planet Pinto and illustration by Kamar74. This book concludes the Empire Without End duology and will be released March of 2025. The fate of empires dances on the tip of a knife in this sweeping tale of myth, imperial legacy, and the love affair of a lifetime. One of the ways my taste has evolved over the years of doing this channel is I just love books that are like relationship forward in their text. And I say relationship, not romance, because of like the baggage that comes with romantasy label now, which is also something I've enjoyed more and more, but specifically love stories, my heart is more open to, and I just enjoy them as I get older. But stepping away from book covers, but staying with the art, we also had the official poster drop for War of the Rohirrim hitting theaters December 13th. And I've had so many thoughts on the various trailers and first looks we've gotten War of the Rohirrim, but for this one, I'm gonna keep it fairly straightforward and simple and say, in terms of a poster, I think this is pretty good. It's not great, but I like the pop of color we're getting in the center. I like the Rohirrim established color palette in the backdrop, the line of horsey boys. There's a momentum and energy to it that, well, it's not exactly a bold, artistically challenging poster. It's aesthetically pleasing and sets a...
What am I doing with my life? Why am I giving thoughts on a stupid poster no one's gonna remember? Who cares? No one. Life's pointless. I'm just gonna die one day and no one will remember me eventually.
Communicate it effectively enough. So I would actually say pretty good poster for War of the Rohirrim, and possibly controversially better than a lot of the posters we got for the original Peter Jackson trilogy, because as much as those are like my favorite films of all time, they bought into a trend that I just was not a big fan of, and this is kind of still in that trend, but a solid execution of it. But if you are a Lord of the Rings fan, that is not the end of the adaptation news you might be putting your little papers on, because we also had a first look of a Hobbit Day reveal. The Lord of the Rings, the War of the Rohirrim Battle of Edoras starter set from the Warhammer community. Announcing the new set available for Lord of the Rings and Warhammer fans, the post said, "We couldn't let such a prestigious day pass without an appropriately bumper gift. So we set our very best burglar into the lair of game developers to retrieve a copy of the brand new Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim, The Battle of Edoras set. What's in the box? Based on characters and events of the upcoming Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim movie, this box set pitches the forces of Rohan against the Hill tribesmen. There are 56 all-new plastic miniatures figures in the box, including mounted and on-foot versions of 4 heroes from the film, as well as some classic Rohan houses, and a 3x3 playmat. Specifically, there will be 28 Rohirrim miniatures, heroes including Helith, Hama, and then the Hill Tribesmen, with heroes like Wolf and Targ. And I assume these will be coming out around the time of the movie, though there was no official release date or price tag on this announcement. How broken is my brain that despite not even knowing how to play Warhammer, there's a part of me that wants to own them. I don't even know why. I kind of want to have these. God damn it. This will bring us to our final Lord of the Rings news of the week, though, which is going to be the Folio Society is going to be dropping another edition of The Hobbit, but this one will be limited to just 1,000 copies and released November 19th. I'm not even going to look at this beyond this because I know the price tag will be painful with their limited editions. So if you're interested in this, I've put it on your radar. I've done my job. I'm backing out. I spent $900 on their goddamn Hitchhiker's set and I can't spend anymore. God. But this next edition, for a different fantasy epic, I'm going to be challenging the creators of it. Send it to me, because that is right. We are getting a new edition of the next 2 Wheel of Time books from Orbit, out December 5th. If you have faith in your product, send it to me for proper examination. If you believe you've made a worthy edition of The Great Hunt and The Dragon Reborn, send it here, and I will give it a proper review and examination. And if I find it up to standard, then I will recommend it to my whole ass audience. If you have faith in your product, you will send it to me. But for the final cover reveal announced this week, we also had a cover put forth from Wraithmark Creative for their next special edition of the Legends and Lattes series with Bookshops and Bonedust by Travis Baldry. And in terms of being an adorable cutesy, I want to hug all the characters, artwork, knocked it out of the park. That's the hell yes. But I like that they're still keeping some of like the creepier fantasy elements that should just remain in any series like this, like the massive set of jaws sitting above everybody. Cute and mildly concerning. My favorite. If I had a criticism here, it's not my favorite titling that Wraithmark Creative has done for any of their special edition launches. It's a little too swirly-durly for me in terms of the font, but I do like the black framing around the more muted art because it ends up resulting in these like colors popping a bit more than you think they should, and that works pretty well. From here, though, we have a rather interesting story coming to us about some physical changes to the books you may be reading in your hands if you're not an ebook or audiobook consistent person, because it looks like we are going to be having publishers try and make skinnier books to save on money and emissions. And I do like that they admitted this is also a money thing. That's, yeah, with inflation and everything, books are getting more expensive. Hardcovers are like always over $30 now, which is crazy. And I'll always just encourage people to like, buy used books. Used bookstores are a wonderful thing. But if you are trying to go new, here's what you need to know. Roughly 767 million paperbacks were sold in 2023, which of course the making of those consumed a shit ton of electricity, as well as paper production consuming quite a bit of forest. And while some publishers have already been trying to go for slightly thinner paper, the publisher HarperCollins is experimenting with a compact typeface that requires less ink and paper, which could result in savings of hundreds of millions of pages. There is a field of sustainable typesetting, with a focus on trying to make complex typesetting for long texts, including the likes of religious, to be as mass printable as possible while consuming the least amount. And while this has been able to achieve reductions of total page count of up to 50%, it's predicted that will not be nearly as large a change for novels, but still a notable one. And getting into the details of how exactly this is done, the article goes on to explain, well, it is common to simply increase the point size to make text easier to read. The readability is actually determined by X height. The X height is the height of the most lowercase letters in the Latin alphabet and makes up nearly all of the printed marks on the page. the X height can be increased without enlarging all of the text. For many designers, increasing the X height is key to increasing legibility. One of the typefaces 2K/Denmark has designed is called Sustainable Serif. This has a larger X height, for instance, than the popular typeface Garamond, compared to the Sustainable Serif at 12 point. For Garamond to have the same size of the letter, it has to scale up to 15.2 point size. The typeface like Garamond also have thinner lines and strokes, which can fade in the page as point size is reduced. Sustainable Serif has thicker strokes. Basically, reducing point size is not always the optimal way to reduce the physical size of a book. But the goal here is to essentially make a change that readers will not care about or hardly notice at all. And according to Mr. Stober involved in this project, all of this could result in a 20% reduction in pages, which would be equivalent to a 20% reduction in carbon emissions. But this is yet to be proven to be absolutely true. And my personal thoughts on this are, as long as what they're saying turns out in practice to be accurate, fine. I personally don't need books to be thicker on my shelf. There's even an angle to this where it's like, oh, you mean I can put more books next to each other? Fantastic. And on top of that, I understand there's some people who are visually impaired, but nearly everyone I've talked to who has a disability within that category just already goes for books that are, printed large for them by default. And if you're reading the article, you'll notice that the people behind this development actually do work with the visually impaired. This is coming from that science. And so for your average reader, if this is able to make it so that they're not even able to notice a substantial change and the books they're consuming do less harm to the environment.
What's the catch?
I mean, if you want to do absolutely minimal harm to the environment, you get a used e-reader and you just load 10,000 books on there, and then that's your entire footprint as a reader aside from charging the device. But there's a lot of people who don't like that reading experience, myself necessarily included. I still use my Kobo, but it's not my preferred way to read a book. And by God, being a book nerd is not nearly as consuming of a hobby as many others, so I think people are fine, but if we make it a bit better, fantastic. And also, there's another angle to this where so many printers have gone away from printing pages for books to be published, and because of the delivery package boom are now more focused on cardboard, things along those lines. That's what's actually choking up many of the books you want trying to be published sooner. Now there's these big lines. No, it's not just one person's Kickstarter. Angry people on Twitter who are saying that have absolutely no fucking idea what they're talking about. There is, and I mean this, if you look into it, still fallout from the pandemic that changed how printers are working and focusing their lines that is affecting publishing to this day. And so this seems like another step in trying to ease up those lines and get more books printed and released on shelves faster while leaving less of a large footprint. And if that means the typeface needs to be messed with in a way that I might not even notice, good news. Yay, I like this. Happy. And for those of you who are looking forward to the next episode of Between Two Perns, yes, Jackson Dickert is going to be throwing down with Alexander Darwin. Here's a clip.
As an author, do you have to attend a lot of conventions?
Usually they're not paid for, so not that often.
Oh. Have you ever been to SOCON?
I have not.
SOCON D's nuts.
お前はもう死んでいる。何?
This is a fun one, I like. Oh, these are really fun. These are kind of diabolical. It's a wrist lock.
Oh, don't do.
Hey, be careful with this one.
I'm gonna lick your foot!
I'll bite your foot. All right, so we're gonna get you in mount position here.
No!
Here's what we call a gift wrap. I don't like the present.
This is how I...
Oh, now you're back in the bow and arrow choke.
No, I got you in a hole. This is me, guy.
All right, now you can mount me.
Never had a man say that to me before.
Yeah, you always were like, oh, is someone eventually going to have a problem with him asking those kind of questions? The answer is Alexander Darwin did. And that'll be available over on his channel, Author Jackson Dickert. We've also got a lot going on Patreon right now, including writing sneak previews, additional bonus content. I yell about a piano. It's a good time. Check it on out, especially if you want to see Kayla and I's full thoughts on Rebel Moon 2 and how much it hurt us. But as I mentioned last week, Better Dead has hit my next book, 70,000 words. And soon I'll be posting snippets of the first few chapters for you all to brutally give me feedback on. But I've been able to improve my writing on rewrites by checking out classes through today's sponsor, Skillshare. Daniel Jose Older's class on creative writing essentials, writing standout opening scenes, was particularly enlightening, especially since he used his own novel as a case study, so he could really highlight the points he was talking about. He came highly reviewed and recommended, and As someone who now knows what he talked about, I can see why. Basically, he shows you how to break down a scene and then a bunch of exercises that help you to analyze your characters, the movement and flow, and the structure of the scene itself. It definitely meant revisiting scenes I already written and breaking them down, which came with a lot of rewrites and edits, but it helped me unstick my brain when I hit a wall. Anyway, I highly recommend you check it out. And as you'll know, it's available on Skillshare, the largest online learning community for creatives with thousands of classes led by industry experts. And they cover everything from publishing to design, animation, illustration, writing, storytelling, and how to be a successful hitman. The best part of the sponsorship, the first 500 people to use my link in the description down below will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So be sure to, rush on in and check it out. No holds barred. Do it. Do it. I also think, though, it's great for people who'd like to be beta readers or educated, informed reviewers, because there's even classes on how to critically break down writing. So if that sounds interesting to you, be sure to be one of the first 500 people to click the link in the description down below. Back to the video. But this takes me to the final thing I want to get out before I leave the safety of the void, and that is the Sanderson Conspiracy. I want to make it abundantly clear before we get into this, despite me occasionally being in touch with some people in Sanderson's team just for events, I have absolutely zilch, no insider knowledge. I also did not run this by them or anything like that beforehand. This is a true homegrown Sanderson conspiracy. And to really drive home that point, I would really like to put on a tinfoil hat. I have no tinfoil. We will make do. Hear me out. Observing a pattern of behavior, I have noted, as well as many others here on BookTube, Sanderson likes to drop surprises on his fans. Whether it's, unveiling 5 secret projects on us that he had written without anybody being aware of beforehand, or the fact that his tabletop RPG was, surprise, actually expanded out to cover the entirety of the Cosmere. There is a pattern of behavior where Sanderson knows how to game the hype system. And so what would be the most hype way for Sanderson to actually announce his first real adaptation? Well, what if he announced it while it was already in production with a full cast, directors and everything already picked out? You could say it would be impossible for him to keep all of that under wraps, but this is the man who hid 5 books and an entire new board game. I'm not saying there's going to be a trailer ready or anything along those lines, but we could be announced a project that is substantially further down the road than we've been led to believe, instead of one of these just, it's been greenlit debacles, but instead keeping it all under super duper secret wraps and springing it on the fandom as a whole when things are truly prepared. Because it was an obviously convenient excuse to have an adaptation fail and fade away into the mist during the pandemic. Oh, the Mistborn might be happening. It went away. Would a studio truly let go the best-selling fantasy author without an adaptation just because of the... Probably. That's actually a very good, reasonable excuse. Or it was all a ruse, and the whole time progress has been being made. And in fact, there is going to be a big Cosmere adaptation announcement dropped on us in a true Sanderson style.
And all of this comes to a head because what do we know for sure? There's going to be actors at the convention doing these odd wedding ceremonies for people to partake in. But what if the ultimate reveal is that the actors are the real actors for the adaptation? Now, you think I'm crazy.
Now, I want to make it abundantly clear. I am saying this just so that if it happens to be the case, I get to pull off the biggest I told you so of any Cosmere fan ever. And if I'm wrong, this will conveniently fade into the ether and everyone will forget about it and it will never be held over my head. But genuinely, there is this voice in my head that is telling me Sanderson is a god tier marketer to his fans, obviously. And in a day and age where adaptations of all sizes are being announced right, left, up, and down, self-funded or studio-backed, one way to make a splash in the way Sanderson clearly likes to among his fans and even outside of them would be to just BAM! Drop it with the full set of expected features and a crazy cast list, whether it's animated or live action, already good to go, so that we don't have any of the waiting period where the hype can sizzle, and instead it leans right in to his pattern of branding and marketing. Am I crazy? Yes, but I think this could be possible. Possible. And I'm probably wrong.
But maybe I can help you believe.
And in a story that I'm personally really excited for, we have finally gotten details on Ryan Coogler's upcoming vampire film starring Michael B. Jordan and Haley Steinfeld. And it's a bit different for a vampire movie. Consider me, I wish I was wearing glasses right now, interested. The film, titled Sinners, will be a period piece hitting theaters March of 2025 and be distributed by Warner Brothers. With a synopsis that reads, trying to leave their troubled lives behind, twin brothers return to their hometown to start again, only to discover that an even greater evil is waiting to welcome them back. The plot follows twin vampires, both played by Jordan, who arrive in a racist town and go to war against the Ku Klux Klan members, set in the middle of the 1930s, during the height of the Jim Crow South. The film tackles the racial tensions of the era. Sinners has a budget of around $90 million, and we can expect the first trailer to be released in October. And with the filming happening in New Orleans, I assume that's the town they're talking about going back to, so already we have an interesting city to be placing vampire stuff in, with an even more alternative setting than a lot of the stories we've gotten before, with an actor who is fucking awesome, taking on, just like historically we can all agree on, bad guys. That's, yes, give me that, please. And Ryan Coogler, of course, is well established as a director who can handle all of the above topics, except I don't know if he's done a period piece, but he's certainly handled action with Black Panther and Creed. I'm hoping he leans actually more towards the Creed style for the vampire fights. I think kind of a more intense, like close up, whatever. But also he has a proven track record with films that handle complex racial narratives. See Fruitvale Station. But then shifting gears into just speculative fiction trailer territory, we had a second trailer drop for the Gladiator sequel directed by Ridley Scott, starring Pedro Pascal, Paul Mescal, and Denzel Washington. And it looked better than the first trailer, certainly. I am just personally a bit hesitant when it comes to Ridley Scott projects now, not because he's done anything I think egregiously bad, but he's consistently come back to franchises and just done like, okay, and even his original stuff has been, you can criticize it and enjoy it territory for me, personally. But the cast is cool enough that like I'm kind of just gonna be here for the badass action sequences, and I'm sure like adrenaline pumping macho moments that Ridley Scott has always been pretty goddamn good at. But now, if you remember in the last episode of Fantasy News, I had to apologize because I previously had covered the fact that Netflix was trying to make a Magic the Gathering show happen, and then in the last episode of Fantasy News, I was like, actually, it's not happening, canceled. Well, this time I have to come back again and say it's uncanceled and it's returning. And I'm sorry for the roller coaster for Magic the Gathering fans, because what they've done apparently is just replaced the showrunner and brought it back from the grave, because now Terry Matalas is going to be running the show. Unfortunately, nearly every bit of possible plot details for this adaptation are being kept under wraps, possibly because it's so early on they aren't even sure yet. There's plenty you can do with the 30 plus years of history, I believe at this point, for Magic the Gathering lore to bring into a show. The negative note I unfortunately have to end this on, though, is no disrespect to Terry Matalas. I looked into every project he's worked on, and pretty much none of them I've been a fan of. They certainly have their fans, no question, but it's not exactly up my alley, so this is one I'm going to be waiting to see a lot more on before I'm trying to give strong thoughts either way. But right now, I'm holding a grain of salt. We also had a trailer drop for Season 2 of Arcane, and I'm going to do that thing where I'm going to go, hey, it's happening, I'm not watching it, because I want no spoilers for Arcane Season 2 for myself, and they have been pretty liberal with what they're showing in their trailers in terms of possible plot lines. So I have not watched this. I'm gonna have Kayla put it in at this time. Kayla, edit the video right now. Do what you want to do. I'm not looking. And then we also had a kind of trailer teaser announcement from Netflix stating the fact that they will once again be collaborating with CD Projekt Red with their IP Cyberpunk. So if you are a fan of Cyberpunk Edge Runners, go ahead and get them teeth chattering in excitement for another collaboration between the two. And if you are a horror movie fan like myself and already just shaking with excitement for Halloween in October, I'm happy to say we got another horror movie trailer drop this week titled Don't Move. And it seems to be at least in my interpretation of it, play on the most dangerous game trope, where except now someone has been injected with something that is slowly paralyzing them as they are fleeing in terror of someone hunting them. That is nightmare fuel. And Sam Raimi combined with horror is always a combination that's going to inject joy straight into my veins. So this one I'm going to be putting my butt down to consume on launch day. And then in the final trailer we're going to be covering here today, I really wanted this snap for the conspiracy transition to be loud, but I couldn't get that to be loud. But the one I just randomly did here, trying far less hard, was substantially better. So I'm sure I used a sound effect on that one and I didn't have to on this one. And that sucks. But anyway, we had a trailer drop for a really interesting adaptation of a sci-fi novel starring Robert Pattinson called Mickey 17. And it seems this person is consistently sent into incredibly hazardous situations, dies, is then reborn in a new replicant body, and that's their job. And we are currently on the 17th iteration. Because of films like Good Time and Lighthouse, Robert Pattinson has absolutely become a must-watch actor for me, and this sci-fi premise is strong enough on its own, but I also met the author recently and he was super nice. Combine that with the director from Parasite, and this just seems like it could be an instant hit, especially for hardcore sci-fi fans. And it's cool to see a sci-fi novel get such a high-budget adaptation that's not a part of an existing established franchise, and nabbing one of the biggest names in like indie movie Hollywood. So yeah, motherfuckers, fucking check this one out, you in the link down below, where everything is linked from what we cover here in today's fantasy news, as well as a link to our Discord server, where if you'd like to submit stories for me to cover next week, you can do so in the Fantasy News channel, or just join to talk with a bunch of other people about like every other sci-fi fantasy book imaginable. There's so many channels and they're dedicated to books. And then in the only piece of quickie news this week that I'm going to try and nail in one take, we have also had some casting announced for season 2 of the live action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender happening over at Netflix. I said Netflix. Gah! Mia Ketch has been cast as Toph, who you may know from The Darkest Minds, Marvelous and the Black Hole, or the only work of hers I've actually been able to see, Beef, which was really, really fucking good.
And today's Indie Pub promo is Scrambled Eggs, a short story collection by Lila Souza, pitched as a blend of funny, serious, and creepy. These stories offer a glimpse of some of today's most common challenges with a tongue-in-cheek, if sometimes dark and morbid, sense of humor. A young girl faces her biggest fear, the deep end. A mermaid who sings the praises of big walks. A young editor who becomes addicted to origami after getting laid off. A pair of sex offenders who get their comeuppance in the afterlife, and more. Check it out in the links down below.
But to close out this fantasy news, I'm just going to say thank you all so much for showing up, even when I'm here in this kind of like shotgun studio space and supporting what I do here. I appreciate you all. Every single day I wake up and I get to do this job. So that's the fantasy news rating it on. You all rock. The goblins are great. And I can't wait to see you later this week when I review He Who Fights Monsters. Have a good one, y'all. Love you. Bye. And I'd like to give a special shout out to my latest high tier Patreons, Claudio and Arathion. You two absolutely sound like you should be the stars of a fantasy book.